Okay, my name is Sean Bucklew with In-House Plumbing Company. I'm the owner of the company, and I wanted to take a minute to explain, especially for our blog post that is related to underslab cast iron pipe repair or replace. So the question is, if you have underslab cast iron pipe, should you repair it or replace it? There in that blog post, there's an illustration that we give written out, and I wanted to put a video together to really give you a picture and an explanation of what actually happened in that situation. So this is the house, the layout of the house that we talk about in that illustration, and this is basically just a non-written on layout. What we talk about there to start the situation is the fact that the homeowner had previous repairs done at that house, where there was they had replaced 12 feet of pipe underneath the house for the kitchen sink sewer line. Okay, so the 12 feet from the kitchen towards the bathrooms. Okay, and what I've done here is highlight this in green. Okay, so this part, about 12 feet of pipe, was replaced. They made an access hole. The original company, the former company, which was not us, made an access hole where this X mark is at. They tunneled underneath here to the end of this green here and replaced all of this pipe in this particular section to solve a leaking problem that the customer had originally had. Okay, so that what was done. Now, a couple of important things that I want to point out here is that there is 43 feet of pipe basically from this kitchen to where it ties into the main sewer line, which is here, and the dashed lines are approximate location of sewer pipes. Okay, so 43 feet of pipe on this line. There's approximately 24 feet of pipe on this line for this washer machine. There is 9 feet of pipe going over from the toilets to the shower. There is approximately 18 feet of pipe basically from this toilet to the front of the house. Okay, and then you've got everything outside. Okay, so that's kind of some setup information of this situation. So when we got involved, there were multiple leaks, and I don't have in this video basically how many leaks there were, but the premise to the homeowner, we explained to them that their options were to replace all the pipe, find and fix the leaks, replace some of the pipe. Okay, and so we gave them ultimately several options in that scenario. This illustrates what we actually did there. We replaced all of the pipe, which is the option that the homeowner chose to do. Okay, and this is how we did it. Okay, and so what we did here is we plumbed this through the wall here. There was an add-on sunroom here. This was an old patio that they had created into a room. We replaced the pipe through the wall, and there was cabinets all along here, so we actually went inside of these actual cabinets, poked the pipe out right outside on the patio, kind of tunneled under the patio a little bit, and got the pipe to the outside and came around here, tied in a trench. This was all trench out here. We made an access hole outside here on the side of the house, tunneled all the way to the sink in here and to the shower, and replaced all of this pipe under here and plumbed it into this line and then out to the sewer line and tied it back into here. What that did is abandon all of the pipe from the main line or from the front of the house, I should say, on the main line to this bathroom. It also abandoned all of the washer machine pipe. Okay, at that point we were able to make an access hole, or not an access hole. We took off some of the bricks at the kitchen, and without even doing anything under the slab here, we were able to go take the pipe right outside, down into the ground, trench around, and tie it back into the front yard. Okay, that price in 2015. Now please understand that every house is different as to what you have to do to reroute it. Number one is, where does the sewer line exit the house at? Does it exit the front, the back, the sides? Okay, and so if this sewer line exited the side, It would change everything about what you have to do to reroute this. This would take a lot more work to do something with. And if it was to exit this side, one of the problems is you would probably likely not have enough fall to bring this pipe all the way around this house, and you would have too many turns in that line with a solid waste lines, which is toilets. Okay, and so you want to avoid doing something like that. Well, if it came out right here, you wouldn't have this trench, but you would have a lot more work for this and a lot more work, or less, basically the same amount of work here. If it came out the back, then you'd have to figure out another way to do the kitchen sink. Okay, and so every house is different as to what it takes to reroute it or replace the pipe. Okay, and pricing changes every year, every two, whatever the case may be. Inflation happens, costs go up, etc. Materials and things like that. Okay, so at this particular time when we did this job was in 2015, and the price for this job was $15,210. Okay, and I wanted to put the pricing on here because I wanted to make the point of what this situation, what really happened in this situation. Okay, so what we did, like I said, we gave the homeowner several options. Okay, so here is a scenario if all we were going to do was replace the washing machine line, that's it, nothing else, we were going to leave everything else the same, then this is what it would be. Okay, this is what we would have to do, and the cost for that would have been in 2015 $6,305. Now, I want to make a point here too that's really important. If you only replace one part of the line and don't replace it all, technically, okay, especially what is the reason you're replacing that line. Okay, if it's to stop leaks, then the problem you get into is that truthfully you really need to end up capping off this line. So if we just did the washing machine, we would really need to get right here and disconnect this line from this line so that you could do a whole house test and actually verify that there was no more leaks. Okay, a whole house test and verify there was no more leaks. Now, a lot of people don't go in and cap this line off. Okay, which if you read the blog post that this is connected to, okay, then the scenario, that one of the things that it talks about in there is if you can't afford to replace all of your cast iron pipe, then the most important thing that I want you to get out of this is look at it from a standpoint of, okay, what will get me down the road towards the future? If I got a leak on this line, rather than going and replacing some of this pipe, fixing 3 foot of the pipe if it's just a leak, or replacing a section of pipe like was done in here, rather than doing that, if I reroute it, okay, then I've done away with this whole line here, and I don't ever have to touch it again. And if possible, now again, every house is different on how you have to replace it, okay, but if possible, I potentially put that pipe or a lot of that pipe outside of the house, which is a huge benefit, so that I don't actually have to mess with anything under the slab ever again. And I tell people all the time that just because you put PVC pipe under the house to replace the cast iron doesn't mean that you'll never have a leak again. And the reason for that is in the North Texas area, okay, Dallas-Fort Worth area, you cannot stop the dirt from moving. Our dirt moves constantly, okay? Some places worse than others. And so as that dirt moves, there's no way to guarantee that there's never going to be an actual problem underneath there. Again, as the pipe moves, if it's connected to the concrete, then the slab can lift up or drop or whatever the case may be, and all of that can cause problems. So no guarantee there'll never be a problem again. So if you can put pipe outside, then that's a huge benefit, because now, first of all, it's outside. It's easier to fix if necessary in the future. Okay, and the other benefit is the only reason to fix leaks, actual leaks, okay, the only reason to do that is if it's under the house, because that under the house, because of our soils that we have around here, can cause structural damage to the house. It can cause the house to move one way or another, up or down. generally up, okay, but it can also cause it to drop in certain situations. And so those leaks, because they can cause problems, okay, it's important to try to, if we can keep that pipe outside and underground in the yard, then even if it leaks out there, it's never going to cause structural damage to the house. You're never going to see water above the actual ground. I don't care what anybody tells you, okay? And so at that point, there's really no reason to fix it unless some roots grew into that leak and then caused a stoppage problem where the system wasn't draining properly. If that was the case, then you could easily find that problem. And there's several different ways that can do that, but you can find that problem and fix it, and it's a lot easier to fix it if it's outside. So now, if in this situation, if the homeowner chose not to actually not to fix it, but to reroute it, okay, because it was cast iron, and I'm moving in a direction as a homeowner to not to end up replacing all my pipe without doing it all at the same time, okay, then it's not a bad idea if it can be done. There's a lot of things to think about there, and so feel free to call us and talk to us about your exact situation, and we'll be glad to help you in any way we can. But it's not a bad idea to not cap this off, knowing there's no water flowing through this spot anymore, okay? Knowing that, now you wouldn't want to do that and leave it there permanently, if never to do anything else here in the future. But if the plan was that, okay, I'm doing this now, a few years later or whatever the case may be, whenever I have a problem on this line, I'm going to do this. And then a few years later, or whatever the case may be, when I have a problem on this line, I'm going to do this, okay? Then over time, this cap is going to be not needed because you're going to abandon this, you're going to abandon all of this, and all this pipe is going to be abandoned underneath here, okay? And so capping is a good idea, especially if you need the rest of the system to not leak. Because if it's connected here, even though it's not connected over here anymore, whatever the leak is on this line, if you filled the sewer system full of water, would actually still leak out of this spot. Okay, and so it's not a good idea, but if we're moving in a direction to completely replace it, okay, then we have done at one time in our future, in our past, I should say, we would not actually do this job without capping it off for many reasons, okay? But we've moved in a direction as the cast iron has gotten older and older and older, okay? And people couldn't afford to completely replace it right away all at one time, okay, of saying, hey, let's look at this towards the future and what would we do if we were going to completely replace it. Okay, where's the leaks? Can we do this part now, this part later, this part later? Okay, and so kind of give you a little idea there. So this was one scenario, one option on there, okay, washing machine only, 6,305. Now, this is the point that I really want to make here is this is the kitchen, okay? The former plumber tunneled 12 feet here, okay? Here's the problem. What's he going to do the next time that he has to replace everything? Is he going to continue, is he going to make an access hole out here again, dig this 20 foot back up and then go all the way across the house here? Is he going to dig from this side towards this side and again leaving the whole pipe underneath the actual house? Is he going to, what if there's a problem on this? Is he going to dig from the garage? Is he going to dig from over here somewhere? Is he going to dig through the slab? Okay, and I'm not opposed to putting holes through the slab. There are a lot of plumbers that are. I'm not, for a lot of reasons. Got any questions on that? Feel free to call, okay, and I'll walk you through why. But the point is, what is he going to do? 12 feet of pipe, if this was all bad at one point, how long do you think it was going to take before the rest of this was bad? And what was the plan if the rest of this was bad? Okay, was it to tunnel 43 feet? Well, that makes no sense. Okay, so this customer spent $6,000 or so, okay, to do this job right here, knowing that in the future, or they didn't know this at the time, but us knowing now that the future was either you're going to have to spend a whole bunch more money and replace the 43 feet, or you're going to reroute it to the outside of the house, which is the best plan of action. Now look what we would have had to do. Look what we would have suggested to do if they didn't want to do anything else. We would have said, make an access hole here the bricks, take off those bricks, okay, plumb it down into a trench so that no pipe is underneath the slab here. We abandon this completely, okay, and we go outside. That would have been $3,810, $3,810, and they would have never had to touch this 6 foot or 12 foot of pipe underneath here again. $6,000 worth of work. Okay, this is what needed to be done. Now, this is what we did in the complete replacement, which means all of that $6,000 worth of work was abandoned and wasted. There was no reason for it. It worked for a year or 2 or 3 or whatever it was. I don't remember when they replaced it, when they did this work before we did our stuff. But so now, this is a perfect example of, okay, maybe we should have capped off the line. We would have recommended capping off the line in here. But again, with the idea that they would come in and do this later, and they would come in and do this later, then no water's flowing through here. You don't cap that off for now. Again, with the ideas that you're doing those other deals later. Okay, so 3810 would have been that situation. And then if we were doing just the bathroom lines, okay, it would have been 7270 for that. And again, those are all 2015 prices and prices for this particular house. The amount of tunnel that we need, the amount of trench that we need, the amount of access holes we need, etc. Okay, amount of plumbing that has to be done. So one of the things that I wanted to point out here is our complete replacement in 2015 was $15,210. If they would have done it on a partial basis. Now again, prices change, and so if they would have done one time and another one several years later, potentially prices could have changed on this. Okay, but our partial replacement at that particular time, and the point I want to make on this partial replacement is the complete replacement. You know, we only need to do one reroute pit, one of these access holes here to tie everything together. If we're doing everything at the same time, we need to do that potentially 3 different times, okay, if we're doing it separately. Okay, so that's the scenario of where if we do it all 3 separate times, okay, and there's some other costs that you look at in there that if it was all together would be less than if it was separate. Okay, so in this particular case, it would have been $2,000 and a couple $100 more, okay, to do separately, the job separately versus doing it all together. So it is better to do it all at the same time, but if you just can't afford that, then what we learned here in this video, and what I hope you learned, is that it's definitely not a good idea to do anything underneath there that's going to be abandoned later, okay, or do the least amount of work possible that's going to be abandoned later. And so in this particular case, this customer spent $15,210, which is what we charged them, and $6,000 or so, which is what the other company chain charged them. I think it was just slightly above $6,000. But let's just go with $6,000 for illustration purposes. $21,210 is what they spent. Whereas if they would have done it the other way, they still would have saved money, potentially. Okay, and then the way they did it, if they would have just replaced everything all at that one time, instead of spending $6,000, they could have spent $9,000 more and had it completely replaced. Okay, so that's I just wanted to make this video so that you had some real, you could put some tangible pictures and information towards that, to what that blog post is saying. If you've got any questions, you need anything at all when you watch this video and read that blog post, we can look at your house and really look towards what's the best plan for the future if you've got cast iron pipe underneath there. Okay, now we're not recommending replace or repair the cast iron at this point, just because of how old a lot of this cast iron is underneath there. We certainly will do it, okay, as the blog post mentions, but it's getting the closer and closer we get to the total lifespan of all of the cast iron that's out there, and over the lifespan in many cases is still out there, the more and more it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever to go in there and spot repair. You really need to move in a direction of replacement. Got any questions, please feel free to let us know. Thanks a lot and have a great day.